Hello, my name is Peter Douglas and I'm the CEO of IPAF. Welcome to this webinar focusing on the key aspects of safe operation of mast climbing work platforms. Before I come on to mast climbing work platforms, I just wanted to update you on a few of the Federation's main areas of focus at the moment. Firstly, we've successfully in June launched our EPAL app in the UK and Ireland. Now, the EPAL app is digitising a lot of the manual processes of training and certification. The app stores your powered access license, stores your other IPAF certifications, all neatly within the app. It also stores an operator safety guide, an operator logbook. So you have a digital logbook that you can now log all of your operating experience into. It also provides regular safety updates from the IPAF team based on the operators themselves and mistakes that happen. And so it's a really neat thing. The feedback has been tremendous in the UK and Ireland. It's not just available to operators taking a new course. If you already hold an IPAF certification or card, you can download the app and put your ID in and your credentials will appear digitally. We hope to launch to the rest of the world throughout Q3, 4 and Q1 in 2022. We've also launched a new site assessment course. When we analysed the data from our accident reporting portal, we realised that sometimes the problem is not the operation of the MEWP, it's actually the incorrect selection of the right MEWP to do the job. So we've now got this fantastic new site assessment course that gives the candidates all of the skills needed to select the correct MEWP for the job. It's available in e-learning only or as an instructor-led course, and the feedback from that course has been tremendous. And over 400 people have taken up that course since we launched it at the end of March this year. We've also launched our IPAF Powered Access Apprenticeship course in the UK. There was a big gap left when the CITB stopped doing their funded apprenticeship courses and their plant mechanics course. It wasn't powered access specific, but a lot of the powered access rental companies in the UK used the CITB as the best, closest thing to a powered access specific apprenticeship. We've now worked with, in conjunction with a couple of colleges, and launched a powered access specific apprenticeship course in the UK. And our first cohort started their journeys into the powered access industry in April this year. We hoped to run a second cohort in September, October this year, but demand has been so good, it's looking like we're going to be running 3 or 4 cohorts. So something that's been really needed, that our members are really taking up on. We're looking at least for another 3 cohorts in October this year. We're also looking at the possibility of doing this in other territories and trying to put together a roadmap in other areas of the world where we may be able to do this. Finally, our accident reporting portal, something that really drives a lot of our safety initiatives. You know, we've been collecting accident data now for over 10 years. The data that we get drives improvements to our training programs, guidance that we write, and the access posters and toolbox talks that we publish. It really drives a lot of our safety-driven activity. I just want to ask the members and non-members that are watching this webinar, please log on to our accident reporting portal. And if you don't already do so, please report any known accidents and help us to help the industry remain safe. The IPAF team is very proud to have trained more than 2 million operators since the inception of our operator training programs back in the 1990s. I'm also very pleased to report, despite ongoing restrictions in some territories, 2021 so far has seen our best ever 2 months training numbers. In March, over 17,000 operators were trained for the first time ever in a single month. And in May, 16,279 operators were trained in our best 2 ever months. So thank you to all of our members and training centres who continue to push and improve safety in our industry. IPAF has been involved with the mass climbing work platform sector since the very beginning in the UK, when a fatal accident due to a collapse happened in 1985. And the industry found in IPAF a place to start promoting training and best practice for the use of mass climbing work platforms to avoid any future occurrences. At that time, the fleet was rapidly expanding, and IPAF became the first forum for mass climbing work platform manufacturers, rental companies, and users. One of its first accomplishments was the BS 7881 Code of Practice for installation, maintenance, thorough examination, and safe use of mass climbing work platforms. The Mass Climbing Work Platform International Committee and the UK Work Group have always been quite active, but especially in the last couple of years, they've been on overdrive. When IPAF has reinforced support to this sector, with it being one of the aims of our IPAF strategic 3-year plan. We've listened to the request of members to develop training for construction hoists, which is now a reality with an increase in demand in the UK and the US. We've developed the Competent Assessed Person training programme, both for hoists and mass climbing work platforms. And now they are working on a course for mass climbing work platforms and hoists supervisors. Thank you very much from me and the IPAF team to the committee members of the UK Work Group for all of the great work that you have done and achieved over the last couple of years and that you continue to do. And that's it from me. I hope very much you enjoy this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for your introduction and for the update on the latest activities at IPAF. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on from where you're reaching us. Thank you for joining this webinar. I'm Romina Vanzi. I'm the IPAF Head of Regional Development and Mass Climbing Work Platform and Hoist. So this is the first webinar that we are organizing entirely dedicated to Mass Climbing Work Platform. So these, like many other IPAF activities, have been developed and thought by our committees. Our committees, where many members are contributing with their ideas and with their initiatives to develop so many things that now are available for the benefit of the industry. So the topic of this webinar are quite basic. There are basic safety concepts that are often overlooked in the job sites where these machines are used. So our work at IPAF and our mission is to make the construction sector worldwide understand how good these machines are and how safe these machines are. They are the most efficient and safest and most ergonomic way to work on a wall, to work on a facade. And unfortunately, sometimes there are accidents, and these accidents are like shadowing the benefits of this machine. So in the last period, unfortunately, there was a couple of accidents, there were fatal accidents. And so I think it is the right moment to address this message and to talk about these safety principles. The error, the problems that occur most of the time in the accident is human error, lack of training, lack of periodic inspections, or lack of maintenance. And so these are the 3 topics that we will concentrate the webinar on today. So last but not least, I would like to thank our sponsors, the sponsors of this webinar, and these are behind me. These are Alimak, Elevec, Fraco, Hydromobile, and Maber. Without any further ado, I hand over to the organizer of this webinar. Also, he will be facilitating this webinar today. And he's also the convener of the committees, Ángel Ibáñez, whose title is IPAF Global Representative for Mast Climber and Hoist. And I would like to thank him for the great work he's doing with all the committees and all the seminars that he's organizing. So thank you, Angel, and over to you.
Thanks, Romina. Thanks to all those attending the webinar, and special thanks to our sponsors, Maver, Hydromobile, Elevec, Torgar Fraco, and Alimac. Now, before giving way to the first speaker, we are going to see a small video of our sponsor, Maver. Now, our first speaker, Scott Grant, is going to talk about the importance of training for the safe operation of mast climbers. Scott has an extensive experience on all aspects of the operation of MCWPs and construction hoists, including planning, installation, service, repair, and also training as an IPAF senior instructor. He started his career in the Royal Navy. He worked for leading companies in the lifting equipment sector in the UK. And recently he founded his own company specialized on workplace safety training. Over to you, Scott.
Thank you, Angel. And good morning, good afternoon to everybody, wherever you are viewing in the world. I'm just going to share my screen with you here and start my presentation on the training aspect of safe use of mast climbing work platforms. So hopefully you can all see that now. First of all, we have to think about what is training, and a definition that I found of training was this one that says training constitutes a basic concept in human resource development, and it is concerned with developing a particular skill to a desired standard by instruction and practice. Training is a highly useful tool that can bring an employee into a position where they can do their job correctly, effectively, and conscientiously. Training is the act of increasing the knowledge and skill of an employee for doing a particular job. And what this particular definition said to me is that training is a process which includes both the learning element and then the practice until that desired standard is achieved to enable that person to go about and do their job. And then ongoing experience will then be required for that person to become competent in whatever it is that they've trained to do. So when we talk about mass common work platforms, we think about who needs to be trained, and instantly we all kind of think of the operator, the person who's on the platform, taking the machine up and down to do whatever work they're doing on the facade of the building. But actually, the training process has started months earlier with a bunch of other people who are involved in getting that machine to site and installed. We've got our appointed person supplier, who is going to be somebody at the supply company who's going to be responsible for planning and making sure that equipment gets to site and gets installed, in conjunction with an appointed person user, who's going to be a site responsible person who's going to liaise with that appointed person supplier to ensure the safe delivery of the equipment, where it's going to go, and then take responsibility for it once it's been handed over for use on that site. Then we have our installers. Our installers need to be trained and competent to make sure that the equipment is installed efficiently and correctly, and above all else, safely. We have our service engineers, who need to be trained to carry out the routine service and maintenance, and hopefully not, but potentially any faults or breakdowns that would occur on the equipment during its time in service. And then we have some demonstrators who have got a large responsibility to ensure that our trained operators are fully familiarized and understanding every aspect of how to operate the equipment they're going to be using, again, correctly and safely. And the demonstrator's role is a big aspect of the training to the operator, and it's something I'm going to come back to and focus on a little bit more further on. First of all, I want to talk about the different things that need to be trained. We've talked about the different people that need to be trained, but what elements of training do they need? Obviously the specification, the configuration of the equipment, what's going to go in, how it's going to be configured, the installation planning, not only how we're going to put it on site, but how we're going to get it to site. We've got to plan delivery routes and vehicles and make sure we can get the equipment there before we can obviously get it correctly installed. The erection and dismantle itself, getting the equipment built, put up, in use, and then at the end of the project, getting it dismantled and taken away from site again. Operation, including any pre-use checks that need to be carried out on the equipment, vital that all that takes place correctly and with the correct training to enable us to do it. Inspection and maintenance needs to be trained to those service engineers to make sure that they can carry out the task, not only generally, but specifically also to whatever particular machines they're going to be using. And then fire examination and testing. We need to have the right people, the competent people who can carry out the fire examinations, making sure the equipment is safe to operate before it's handed over for use, and then periodically thereafter. So if we look at the training needs of all those various people that we talked about, our appointed person supplier is going to need some manufacturer model specific training, and some suppliers will run more than one particular manufacturer's equipment. So that may involve having some model specific training of 2 or maybe even 3 different manufacturers or models of equipment. A complete understanding then of all those manufacturers' models, and then the model specific tie and load chart awareness, which again can differ significantly from manufacturer to manufacturer. They're going to need to have a good awareness and competence to a licensed installer level of training. This person is going to be creating risk assessments and method statements for the installers to go about installing that equipment. And if they don't know how that process happens, if they haven't got the training and the experience of doing installation, then they're not the correct and appropriate person to be putting those risk assessments and method statements in place. They're going to need their own health and safety awareness for whatever particular industry it is that they're in, whether it's construction or many other industries that mast climbers are used in, and risk assessment guidance. Again, if they're creating risk assessments, they need to know how those risk assessments are created and how we analyze the hazards and find the hazards and then put the correct control measures in place to ensure those risks are kept to a minimum. Our appointed person user then on the site side will need that general site planning for personnel and materials, their own health and safety awareness for, again, for whatever industry it is they're in, and awareness and competence, at least to demonstrate a level of training for mast climbers. As a minimum, that gives them enough knowledge to understand what a mast climber is, what its capabilities are, what it can be used for, and making sure that they're then aware of what the operators are doing on the equipment, so they can obviously monitor that and supervise that. And again, risk assessment guidance is going to be important for them. Not only are they going to be creating risk assessments potentially for the use of the equipment, but they may also be reviewing the risk assessments provided by the appointed person supplier to ensure that the machine gets installed correctly in the first place. Then we have our installers, and within the IPAF training program, we have installers and advanced installers with some different responsibilities, but they all begin with installation. So they've got installation training in how to install a mast climber, and then they're also going to need some, again, manufacturer specific training. If they may have trained on one particular manufacturer's equipment, but then actually when they go back to their place of work, they may be installing a different manufacturer's equipment. They're going to want to be trained in fire examination. The advanced installer will have that fire examination training, but it's also good for the installer to have that knowledge of the standard that they're going to be installing to. The basic erection and dismantle course, manufacturer specific. Basic servicing and electrical course, again, specific to the manufacturer which they're using. And as before with the appointed person supplier, that could be for 2 or 3 or even more different manufacturers, depending on what their company is supplying. Basic engineering parameters course, again, manufacturer specific, and basic legislation awareness. Whatever country they're in installing the equipment, they need to be aware of what the regulations and standards are in that country to ensure they're being compliant with the law. And this is all going to come as part of their installation training. And then a bit more for the installer. They've got a lot of responsibility, obviously. They need their own health and safety awareness, again, for whatever industry it is they're in. Safe systems and emergency procedures, what to do in the event that something isn't going right or something's wrong with the equipment during the installation process, what's there, what's keeping them safe, and what the emergency procedure is, what to do to ensure we can get the machine recovered and back down to the ground. Risk assessment guidance, again, installers need to have a good understanding of risk assessment themselves. They are the best placed people to understand the hazards involved when installing the equipment, and should be involved in that process of creating the risk assessments and method statements for their work on installation to ensure that all the hazards are being realised, and that, you know, we've got control measures in place to make sure the risks are kept to a minimum. And then slinging and signalling. At some point, maybe when the machine's delivered, they may have to offload it. They may be using a side crane to do that. They may be using a vehicle mounted crane, a HIAB of some description, to unload the equipment. And then they may even use that then to begin the installation, to position the mast climber components, build the decks together, and maybe even put some mast up to the first tire position. So slinging and signalling training is going to be quite vital for them as well. Then we get to our demonstrator. And as I said previously, our demonstrator's role is really important. They need to be able to give a demonstration of mast climbing work platform to others in a documented scheme, and have basic legislation awareness. Again, for whatever country it is that they're in the world, there will be some legislation in place, the regulations that say how they've got to go about their process. Again, their health and safety awareness, this goes across the board for everybody. The safe systems and emergency procedures now for the machine in use. That it's important that their operators are going to be fully understanding and familiarised in how that emergency procedures are going to work, and what the safe systems are in place to enable them to work safely and to get down in the event of an emergency. And again, the risk assessment guidance, they're going to be more focused now on making sure the operator is familiar with the risk assessment for their specific task when working from the mast climbing work platform. So it's good to have that knowledge and guidance of risk assessment. Then we get to our operator. We started looking straight away at our operator, but then realised we had all these other people to discuss first. We finally get to our operator now, who's going to need their basic operator training to know how to use a mast climbing work platform. Basic inspection and testing, an understanding of what's being looked at, what's being tested, so that they know what the parameters are, what's the limits to the machine, and that they can make sure the machine continues to work within those. Again, the safe systems and emergency procedures. If there's something goes wrong on the machine, every other user on that platform is then going to be looking directly at the operator to know what to do and how to get that machine back down to the ground and everybody safely off of it. And risk assessment guidance, again, not just for the use of the mast climber, but for whatever task it is they're performing from the mast climber. They need to have that understanding of the risk assessment, the method statement, what the hazards are, and how to eliminate or reduce them as much as possible. So they're all our training needs. And this is where I now want to look a bit more closely at the role of the demonstrator in conjunction with our operator. So in 2016, IPAF launched the Mast Climbing Work Platform operator training course. And prior to that, all users of mast climbers were inducted or familiarized in the use of the equipment by our trained demonstrator. So this would usually be a very experienced person from the supplying company who, once the machine was handed over for use, would give that familiarization to the users in how to make the machine go up and down, what to do in the event of an emergency, how to emergency lower it, and various other aspects of machine use. Should be at least half an hour's worth of familiarization, but could be longer. The problem with this process is that people would then only be familiarized for that particular machine on that particular site. And then once they left and went on to the next job, they would have to start that process all over again from scratch. And if they left at any time, before they were expected to on that site, it could leave gaps. And now we've got untrained or unfamiliarized users on that site going to use mast climbers. So a process that sort of came through was that site managers or supervisors would then become trained demonstrators. And that way, if somebody left or they needed to get some more users on the platforms, they could give them, those users, that demonstration and familiarization in the use of the machine. But quite often, that manager or supervisor's only experience of mast climbers was that one-day demonstrator course that they've had themselves. So my question to all of you would be, do you think a user who has been familiarized by a demonstrator whose only experience is a one-day demonstrator course would be deemed competent to operate a mast climbing work platform? And I'll leave that with you to think about. For me, it's time now, with the operator course being around now for 5 years, it's time that the demonstrator course was, or the role of the demonstrator was changed to that which I think it was created for, and that's to familiarize a trained operator in the use of equipment which may differ significantly from that which they were originally trained on. In the IPAF mute world, a prerequisite to being a demonstrator is having been a previously trained operator. So you can't just go from zero experience to demonstrating and familiarizing the use of equipment to operators in one leap. With the advent of the Mast Climber Operator Training course, there was an update to the British standard, BS 7981, the Code of Practice for Installation, Maintenance, Fire Examination and Safe Use of Mast Climbing Work Platforms. And one of the big and major changes to that British standard was the removal of the term user, and it was replaced with the term operator. And this went about placing a greater emphasis on the UK regulation, PURE, which is the provision and use of work equipment regulations, for all users of work equipment to be trained in its use. So again, highlighting now, we've got this operator training course, let's use it, let's make sure that our operators are properly trained to use the equipment, and let's get our demonstrators in there, familiarizing those people on different manufacturers or models of equipment. And this is going to bring about great benefits for certainly for our employer of the user. Employers don't or shouldn't want to just merely tick a box and say, brilliant, someone's had a bit of familiarization training, now they can go ahead. They want to have some comfort in knowing that they've fulfilled their legal obligations, and that the equipment is now being used correctly and safely, and that the equipment is being kept in good order, so there's no unnecessary damage charges. Hopefully at the end of the project, our operators are looking after the machines, using them correctly as they've been trained to do. And for our operator, our trained operator understands that they have a responsibility to themselves and others is going to be a huge asset to the project. They know that the equipment is going to be used correctly and it's going to be better looked after. They're going to have confidence in their own abilities. They're going to have better knowledge of the equipment and what its limitations are. And they're going to be better equipped to spot any faults or potentially unsafe conditions. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your time and attention. And I'll hand you back to Angel.
Thank you very much, Scott. I think it was a very, very interesting presentation. And before continuing with our next speaker, we'll see a video of our sponsor, Alimak. Our next speaker, Cliff Gorin, will talk about the importance of the technical inspections for the safe operation of mass climbers. Cliff is responsible for technical training courses and support across Alimak's product range of mass climbers, construction hoists, and industrial lifts. He's an IPAF senior instructor and an assessor of inspectors of mass climbers and construction hoists. And he's also an active member in various industry committees and working groups, helping to increase the safety and good practice within the rack and pinion sector. Over to you, Cliff.
Thank you, Angel. I'll share my screen. Right, so the importance of technical inspections from daily checks, pre-use checks to thorough examinations. So the full gamut of inspections that you would expect to do on a mass climbing work platform. So what are the types of inspections that there could be? Key one is the daily pre-use check. So as Scott has demonstrated in the training session that we just covered, operators are trained to use the mass climbing work platform. And one of the key parts of that training is to understand what the daily checks are to make sure that the machine is in a safe condition to work. So it's a visual and operational check, that it's in a fit condition. Typically, there would be a checklist provided by the supplying company, which would form the basis for these checks, though there may be additional ones. The example on the right of the screen there is taken from the British Standard. So they're basic checks. There may be some site specifics that are added to that. It gives the people that are using the equipment the ability to be able to check it's safe to operate. It gives the user organization, the site, the benefits of being able to show that they have carried out pre-use checks. And it also gives the guys that are operating the platform the ability to be able to report defects in a way that is actually written. So they're done by the trained operator who has been familiarized on that particular mass climbing work platform. And the training and assessment in carrying out daily checks was part of the IPAF Mass Climber Operator course, probably a key part of it. Beyond the daily checks, there are weekly inspections. So they're very slightly different in so much as the inspection is a check to make sure that the machine is still safe to operate. Yeah, it's looking at damage, wear, and that the safety functions work correctly. Again, there's a checklist provided, which is normally machine specific. The one on the right is a generic one from the British Standard again, and that's BS 7981. It consists of all of the daily checks, plus additional items where you're actually looking at things in a bit more detail. So a person who carries this out has been assessed as competent to do it, and they require additional training to achieve that. This is one of the differences between the operator and the demonstrator courses. Demonstrators are trained and assessed in weekly inspections. The joy of it, being the demonstrator rather than the operator, is you've now got a different person doing the checks. So you're effectively auditing the daily checks, which increases safety. Then we've got some more technical inspections. So these inspections are carried out as part of the maintenance routine. So the inspections that are done here are typically done by a service engineer. So this is a guy with mechanical and electrical skills who will be looking in much more detail at the machine. And typically a supplying company would provide the person that does this, and they may be done 6 weekly, may be done monthly. It depends on the site conditions and what the machine is being used for, how often these services take place. And those inspections are based on what the manufacturer's literature suggests. So all the manufacturers for all the products all have a target list of maintenance items that should be carried out. Some of it includes inspection, some of it includes actually adjusting things. So all done by a service technician. The next type of technical inspection is a bit more in depth. And depending on what country you're in, there may be a legal driver for this. Certainly within the UK, we have the lifting operations, lifting equipment regulations, which stipulate exactly what needs to be looked at and the format of the report and how long those reports are kept for and where copies of them go. So this is a statutory examination that is carried out by somebody identified as a competent person. So beyond what a service technician would normally do. It's a complete check of the equipment for continued safe use and also whether or not the piece of equipment has been installed correctly, if it's the first thorough examination. The thorough examination itself can include testing, which is in the remit of the competent person to decide what type of testing may be carried out. So it may include load testing, could be tests of safety gear, could be tests of electrical systems, the inclination system on the machine. There are numerous extra pieces depending on what product it is. Could include dismantling components, though typically the machines aren't dismantled while they're in use. So normally the dismantling inspection of component parts is done as a function of a thorough examination that's carried out at the hire company. So things like the internals of a gearbox, wear on gearboxes would be typically done in the service centre from the hire company rather than being done on site. But it's down to the competent person to decide whether or not they want to go into the more depth during the thorough examination. And again, it depends on site conditions and how the machine is being used. Competence for doing the technical inspections is a little different for the competence for doing the basic checks. So advanced installers, when they do their advanced installer course, are actually trained during the course, and then they carry out an assessment with an IPAF instructor in carrying out a thorough examination on the installed mast climbing work platform. So they're given the general skills that would enable that level of competence to be demonstrated. Obviously, that would need then to be backed up and reinforced by manufacturers' training and experience of actually carrying out thorough examinations in the field. IPAF have just introduced the CAP scheme, Competence Assessed Person scheme, to mast climbing work platforms. There's a difference here in that a CAP qualified service engineer or installer has quite a precise recruitment requirement, a demonstration of technical expertise, a demonstration of training from manufacturers, and also demonstration of experience in installing. So these guys are highly qualified industry people rather than being from a third party. The CAP course reinforces what the statutory requirements are for whichever country the course is being run in, and the production of those statutory reports. So the guys are assessed on actually carrying out a thorough examination on an installed piece of equipment, and also assessed on their production of reports, the way they approach the thorough examination, and the way that they look at defects. The third sort of parties that are involved in this are where the site decide they would like somebody that is completely independent of the hire company that they've hired the equipment from. Sometimes it's because there are insurance requirements. So those are typically done by an engineer surveyor from an engineering background. So these guys are very highly experienced persons and have gone through a fairly rigorous training routine, probably across multiple disciplines. They may do pressure vessels, vehicles, and mast climbing work platforms. The problem with the engineer surveyors is they might not necessarily have the level experience as a cap assessed person or even as an advanced installer of a mast climbing work platform. So there are pluses and minuses to using an engineer surveyor. The lower ACOP for lifting equipment identifies a definition of a competent person, which is particularly good. So this is from UK legislation, but it can be taken as good practice. So how Lola describes a competent person is quite specific. So the person carrying out a thorough examination has got to have appropriate practical and theoretical knowledge of the equipment that he's examining that would allow him to detect defects, detect weaknesses, and then assess that importance of those defects and weaknesses against the continued safe use of the equipment. So the guy that does this examination has to be able to certify in his report that, in his opinion, the piece of equipment will remain safe for the length that the report covers. And typically, where people are involved, that would be 6 monthly, though that is UK specific. There's further information expanding on that definition, which is where Lola suggests that the person doing a thorough examination needs to be sufficiently independent and impartial to allow them to make objective decisions. They've got to have the genuine authority and independence that they can do the examinations properly, and that the recommendations they make in their report can be made without fear or favour. And that's one of the reasons why you would typically not end up with a person that installed the machine or maintaining the machine carrying out the thorough examination. There's a separation there. Even on a basic level, if the guy that installed the machine examines it, if he doesn't know he's doing something wrong, it will be right in his report. So having it done by somebody different gets over that, though it doesn't say in our legislation in the UK it can't be the same person. It just suggests it shouldn't normally be. The goals of the thorough examination are quite precise. So the first one is it determines that the mast climbing work platform has been installed correctly and is safe to operate. So this is normally done at the end of the installation prior to the machine being handed over to the users. If it's a periodic thorough examination, the goal is to detect any defects or weaknesses and assess the continued safe use of the mast climber. Secondary functions are it determines that any alterations, repairs or additions have been carried out correctly and the mast climber is safe to use. Production of a report that states that the machine is safe to operate, and that is the responsibility of the person doing the thorough examination to do that. If it's a first thorough examination after installation, there is also a requirement for a statement to say that the machine is installed correctly or not. So the knowledge requirement is quite high for the person doing this. Identification of any defects that may become a hazard, details of what the repairs might be to repair that hazard, and details of anything that might require action in the future. So things like an assessment of wear. It may be that the assessment of wear says that this particular roller will last another 6 weeks, and that would be one of the things that would be written in the report. It's the responsibility of the user organisation to then take action based on what was in the report. So it's quite often that there would be a timescale given for things that are showing wear, where the user organisation are expected to stop using the piece of equipment after a certain date. And normally the supplying company would have done the repair prior to that. But under UK legislation, the responsibility lives with the employer of the person using the equipment, normally known as the duty holder. The final responsibility that the person carrying out the thorough examination has under UK legislation is actually reporting serious injury risks to the reporting authority, be it our health and safety executive or maybe the local authority, depending on where the machine is installed and the environment it's being used in. And that responsibility is down to the person doing the thorough examination. And then if I can get the slide to move on, which it's not going to. There we go. So periodicities of thorough examinations under UK legislation, because the machine lifts people, they are done at a 6-monthly maximum interval. Some other countries in the world are 12 months. There's the odd 13-month one, but 6 months has been considered, certainly bringing knowledge from working at sea, as the normal examination period you would do on pieces of equipment where there's a risk. So all of these are risk-based. So they're done after installation, before handover for use. Changes of configuration. So quite often when a mast climber is installed, it may be one length for the first 3 or 4 ties, and then because the building design dictates it, it might need to be made longer, might need to be made shorter. It may need some rollout deck extensions or something along those lines. So those are changes in configuration. Could even be that somebody wants to have a payload change because of a change in tasking, typically things like glass loading robots and that sort of stuff. So the machine would require to be thoroughly examined in that new configuration. Exceptional circumstances are not identified in our LOLA, but they are in the provision use of work equipment regulations. And exceptional circumstances are things like the site customer decides they would like the thorough examinations done more regularly because they feel that would be safer. That would be an exceptional circumstance. Weather outside of the standard tie loadings, accidents, near misses, accidents or near misses on a similar product, even if it's on a different site or perhaps even in a different country. So these are all safety checks that are done at the minute level by somebody with a very high competence level. Yeah, and it's the duty holder's responsibility, i.e. the person that runs the site, to ensure that these periodic thorough examinations are done. One of the things that LOLA highlights is that there are specific items that need to be in the report of thorough examination. And this particular one, again, is from the British Standard 7981 for mast climbing work platforms. It's an example of a report form for thorough examination that complies with Schedule 1 of LOLA. Effectively, you have to have certain pieces of information that are identified to make the report correct. So the boxes on there have been selected so that you can cover the items that Schedule 1 suggests. So things like the safe working load, height of the mast, number of ties to the structure, the length of the platform, length of any extensions, is a way of identifying the configuration. Name and address of the owner, where the site is, any defects, how to repair those defects and any timescales. And then finally, the signature of the competent person that's carried out that report. May be authenticated by a second person. And that is the legal document that would stay on site throughout the installation. Copies of it would be held back in the supplier's paperwork as well. So what was achieved by carrying out these inspections then? fulfills the employer's moral and legal duty of care towards people that are employed by them on that task, people that are employed by them that happen to be bystanders to that task, and members of the public. So a moral and legal duty. Having the inspections done where you have written records of them as well means that those records can be produced in case anything does go wrong, to demonstrate that you've made an attempt, a very good attempt, to cover your legal duties. It also allows the timely discovery of defects, because of course, if there is an incident, typically there are fairly large financial and reputational damages that result out of that incident, and carrying out the inspections can avoid that. A relative small outlay over a period of time can prevent costly repairs. So I'm looking at things there where wear of an item can cause wear on another part that ends up very expensive, when you could have replaced the part or adjusted the machine to avoid that extra wear. So it is a way of saving money over the lifetime of the machine. So the machine lifespan is improved because it's been inspected regularly, serviced regularly, and adjusted to keep it in top operating condition. And finally, it demonstrates a commitment to safety and to legal compliance. If you carry out the inspections that are recommended in your country, you carry out the inspections that are recommended by the equipment manufacturer, and you make sure that daily checks to ensure the machine remains safe are done, you have done your safety and legal compliance. You've also fulfilled your moral duties. Thank you very much for your time. Back to Angel.
Thank you very much, Cliff, for your fantastic presentation. Very interesting. Before continuing with our next speaker, we'll see a video of our sponsor, Hydromobile.
The F-Series work platforms provide multiple access levels to the structure of commercial and industrial buildings and can fit unconventional configurations such as cantilever, circular, and angular. Through a unique combination of hydraulic technology and a rack and pinion system powered by a combustion engine, these work platforms are completely self-sufficient. The F-Series is an entirely modular system that allows single, double, or multiple mast configurations. In fact, a single F-Series mast can be shared by two independently operated platforms. The F-Series also offers load capacities that can reach up to 5,455 kilograms, 12,026 pounds in single mast configuration. With a two-speed mechanism that allows it to reach a lifting speed of up to 10 meters, 32 feet per minute, the F-Series work platform stands out in the market as the most flexible and the one offering the highest speed capacity ratio.
Our last speaker, Ayumu Kikuhara, will talk about the importance of the maintenance for the safe operation of mass climbers. Ayumu is a businessman with more than 30 years experience in the construction industry. And currently he's the president of the second largest MCWP rental company in Japan. And he's also the president of the Japan Lift Climber Association. He pioneered the rack and pinion industry in the country, and he led the development of the first safety regulations for mass climbers in Japan. Over to you, Ayumu.
Thank you, Angel. Oh, hello, everybody. Let me share that my view. Okay, well, today I'm going to talk about that in Japanese way of the safety. But basically, Scott and Cliff is always, already talked about the many things that I wanted to talk about it. So it's going to be a review a little bit. And I'm sorry that I couldn't change my background picture. It's my high secret room that I do that reading and drinking in the night. But believe me, I'm not drinking yet. Anyhow, okay. Japan Lift Climber Association was founded in 2010 with the 4 rental companies and the 4 construction companies that at the time they owned the lift climbers. And we have introduced the mass climber in 2005 and worked individually for 5 years, but we thought it is very, very dangerous that they're introducing this product without right knowledge to everyone who has the mass climbers, because that we could not afford one accident in the countries while the market is growing. The one serious accident could damage to all the mass climbers. So that we established that with the 2 purposes. One is safety, and one is a product widely known to the market. And we are basically working our committee with the 2 different divisions. One is safety, one is technology. And as far as that are very important 4 checking system in the association is one for the users trainings, one for the assembly guidance for all the instructors, and one for the public inspector for the certificate personals, and one is a safety and health patrol by the safety communities. And to the right, you can see that the little sticker, it gets on at the hard head. Whoever been trained, you will receive that. And also that we provide all the leaflets. And we give that the qualification to the 4 different parts. One is the installation planners, which is that the engineers that they will do the drawings on the job site, that how to set up the machines. And number 2 is assembly instructors. We will send each one of the job site that the assembly instructor that they feel qualified in our association. And the number 3 is that the safety inspector. Every month, we will send that the safety inspector to each job site, and that they will do that all the safety inspector that the job site is all controlled, and that they have done a daily check-in and so on. And number 4 is maintenance technicians for all the rental companies and all the constructors. They own the work platforms. And for those qualifications, you have to study about 120 pages of the textbook that explains that what is mast climber. And each division, you have another 50 to 150 pages of the text that you must study. And you also have to come and meet. And we provide a test. After you pass the test, you will receive the qualification and we will sign. And all those qualifications will last for 4 years, and you have to renew every 4 years. And for the example, like a qualified maintenance technician, after you pass the examination, you will have the license for the lift climber, maintenance technician license, and also that you will receive the sticker for the hat that you are the qualified maintenance technician. Like a maintenance technician, we will meet once a year in June, and we will sit in a class and also on the job site or the warehouse. And what we need to, we will learn and share that how we improving the maintenance and the different type of the machines and things like that. And this is, for example, like a holistic view of the mast climber work platform life cycles for the pre-installation, installation, and the dismantling process, and so on. That we have the checklist as it's showing, and it's probably kind of similar to what the IPAF is doing now, but back in 2005, we didn't know anything about it, so we had to create by our own. And what we are focusing on is in a job site or the training people, you never know what kind of the people will come. So we are trying to visualize the maintenance flow as much as possible. So you can see that what part or where you need to focus to maintenance and that why it's important. And we try to be as detailed as possible that what kind of the part needs to be checked and what kind of the transportation needs to be done and how to stretch in the yard. For example, like with the trucks, this is how we recommend, or actually that all the rental company has to follow the rules, how to use the trucks, or how to tie the mast section or floor, and so on. And this is also the very detailed maintenance product, maintenance procedure. How to take the parts, where it needs to be checked, and how often it needs to be checked. And like we set the certain rules that every motor brakes needs to be checked every 6 months, or every second type of the brakes, like for example, parachute needs to be checked after 300 hours of use or 1 year, whichever comes faster. And that we also give that overspeed and overweight testing on the yard. And we don't do it. We choose randomly and check in at that brake test. And that we need to do that, like explain to you, we need to do that the brake calibration constantly, because in Japanese regulation, we must have that the second brake system is other than the motor brakes. And this is the last part to avoid the serious accidents. So we take care, very, very good take care of these kind of the test, and that the member of the partners has to follow these rules. With a maintenance logbook, we have the daily logbook, monthly logbook with the inspector, and every 3 months, and every once a year. And all the machine has the serial numbers, and every machine has to have this logbook individually. That's so that we can keep track of if anything happens. For instance, if there is any motor brakes breakdown or something happens, we go to the serial numbers of each machines, and we will know what kind of the manufacturer or who made it and what year, and we can go track of it. So we will check all the units, all the machines that is manufactured with that manufacturer. And it's a maintenance logbook also. Sorry, but it's all in Japanese, and this is what we are doing in Japan. But what's most important things that I experienced is what you have to do, what you should do, and do not do what you should not do. And that's the most difficult part. So no matter how much rules that you make, unless that all the planner, all the inspectors, all the installers, or all the maintenance people, you have to do what you should do. And that's the most important thing, and that's key to it, I believe. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Angel.
はい、どうもありがとうございました。菊原さん、お疲れ様です。Thank you very much, Ayumu, for sharing with us such a good sample of best practices. Now we will see a video of our sponsor, Torgar Fraco. And next, we will finish the webinar with a Q&A session. We already have some questions for our speakers.
Trust. It's the cornerstone of all forms of construction. It's the confidence to build together and to bring to life major projects and relationships that go through time. At Fraco, trust has forged our identity. It has made us the North American leader of work platforms, construction hoists, and permanent elevators. Trust forces us to master every step of production, from design, prototyping, and quality manufacturing in our automated plants. Trust justifies this constant concern for safety on the job site, with all materials meeting the highest standards, with sophisticated processes and controls, with renewed training programs for workers and on-site certification. At Fracco, protecting individuals is more than an objective, it's a corporate mission. Trust is the reason the most demanding projects are assigned to us. We believe in the ingenuity of our teams and our ability to innovate. Above all, the quality of our service is a client's requirement which cannot be compromised. For Fracco, being a solid and reliable partner begins with trust.
Now we have some questions for our speakers. Robert Long, I think this one is for Scott. Robert Long is asking what kind of training should apply for a designer or for the designing team involved in designing the temporary works. I assume he means the layout of the mass climbing wall platform on the job site. What kind of training you think should apply for that kind of profile? Scott.
Thanks, Robert. Yeah, I think I didn't go into the design aspect, but there is the standard, the EN 1495 for mast climbers, which specifies a design standard and what should be done at that pre-installation phase as part of the appointed person supplier's role in planning the installation. So yeah, the designers absolutely need to have their own training package to be trained to do the job correctly. And then that goes as part of the checks then that will be done by the appointed person supplier and the appointed person user to ensure that that person is competent to have fulfilled that role. So absolutely, yeah, the whole training process goes all the way up to that design level also, yeah.
Okay. And one question, this one I think is for Cliff, is Craig Hook is asking if IPAF teach installer, advanced installer or demonstrator on how to check if each of the mass climbing or platform motors is able to carry the working load limit of the machine. Cliff.
Yes, and this one is a question that comes up from time to time because you've got the requirements from the thorough examination where the CAP person would expect to do the single brake with the safe working load on. The majority of the hire companies also do full load checks on their drives and look at the brakes individually prior to the machine going out to site. One of the issues is the manufacturers don't always stipulate in their suggested daily or weeklies to do that single brake check. Myself, it is something that I definitely cover when we do the training courses. Some machines it's very easy for an operator to do. Other machines, because of the way that the linked brake systems work, it's difficult to do. So it is explained during the course, and on the machines where it's possible to do it, it is included in the daily checks. But it is quite a difficult one with the variations in products that there might be.
So you think it should be adapted somehow to the model or to the type of machine you are using in every case, right?
Yes, it comes out that way. Yes, so you sort of cover it in general as part of the training course, and then if the model that you actually are doing the training on allows you to demonstrate that, you're able to. It's quite a difficult one with the various different manufacturers' machines, to tell the truth. And I know where Craig's coming from, and I agree with him. I personally think it should be one of the things that's definitely done on a multi-machine, a multi-motored drive, because normally it's fairly straightforward to do. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And this one is for Ayumu. Darren Brady is asking if the safety inspectors in Japan, when carrying out a site inspection, if they check also the logbooks and the records of previous inspections, like the daily and weekly checks done to that specific machine.
Yes. I mean, that those inspector needs to check that the daily books and that also that they check that the machine itself too, and to make sure that the noise is right and greasing is right, and they're not using it overweight and so on. Yes.
And well, I have a question myself that I've been asked many times from members and users about the way you do the maintenance and the way you check the overspeed emergency, the overspeed safety devices in the Japanese market. And when carrying out the calibrations by yourself, some rental companies in Japan, what kind of supervision you have from the manufacturer? Because it's a very, I would say, sophisticated task from the technical point of view. So what kind of support do you have to have from the manufacturer's perspective about the kind of tools you have to use to do that, the kind of procedures you have to follow?
Okay, good. That's a very, very good question. For us, what's most important thing is the manufacturer's support. But when I'm talking about support, not the one-way support, when we have the questions, we ask the manufacturer until we understand and we agree. Sometimes we get in a big argument. Our engineer and manufacturer engineer will continue. I mean, they will almost like a fighting, but manufacturer has to show us with no black box, that otherwise that we cannot responsible to our customer the safety of the machines. You know, a manufacturer cannot just say, okay, you can do it or you can't do it. We need explanation to that for our self-understanding, and also our customers' manufacturer trust and safety. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, pretty much. But about when using the system to do the calibration of the overspeed emergency brake, I guess you ask for a very specific permission from the manufacturer to do that. Of
course, yes.
And okay.
I mean, we do the communication with the manufacturer, and we have to teach them what we can do, and that they have to understand us, and we have to develop a trust that we can do that. Then they will provide us that kind of equipment or the trust or the rights to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Ayumu.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have more questions. So I would like to thank speakers for their time and for sharing with us their knowledge and experience. In this webinar, we have seen that 3 elements are crucial to guarantee the safe operation of mass climbing wall platforms. One is the training, another one is the technical inspections, and another one is the maintenance. And I would say that they are like the 3 legs of a stool. And we've seen some best practice examples to ensure that the safe and effective use of this kind of equipment. And some interesting concepts that have been presented today by our speakers are the idea of delivering a specific training for all the players involved in the operation of MCWPs, be it installers, operators, or service engineers, or like the idea of having a holistic view of the MCWP, designing technical inspections and maintenance plans for the entire life cycle of the machine. Finally, and to finish the webinar, I would like to thank once again to the sponsors and to all the attendees. A recording of this webinar will be available on IPAF's YouTube channel. And thank you very much.